My name is Lila, and if you're reading this, it means I've finally decided to tell my story. Not because I want sympathy or applause. No, those things don't matter to me anymore, but because maybe, just maybe, someone out there will understand why I did what I did. Maybe they'll see that, sometimes, when the world forces your hand, you have no choice but to play their game, only by your own rules. Let me start at the beginning, not the real beginning, of course. Nobody has time for all that backstory. But let's say it starts on a Friday evening in late October, one of those crisp autumn days where the air smells like fallen leaves and regret. I was sitting at my desk in the corner office, a glorified cubicle with a window that didn't open and blinds permanently stuck halfway up. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting an unforgiving glow over everything. The stack of papers threatening to topple onto my keyboard, the half-empty coffee cup growing cold beside me, and the endless emails piling into my inbox faster than I could delete them. I worked as a project manager for Sterling and Company, a mid-sized marketing firm known more for its cutthroat culture than any actual creative brilliance. It wasn't always like this. When I first joined 5 years ago, fresh-faced and eager to prove myself, Sterling had seemed like a dream come true. A place where hard work would be rewarded, where loyalty mattered, where people cared about building something meaningful together. What a joke that turned out to be. But back then, I believed it. Oh, how I believed it. I stayed late every night, skipped lunches to meet deadlines, volunteered for extra assignments, even when my body screamed for rest. And sure enough, promotions came steadily, along with glowing performance, reviews from upper management. They called me dedicated, indispensable. Words that made me feel important, valued. Little did I know, those words were just bait dangling before the trap snapped shut. It started small, requests to help out, over the weekend here and there. At first, it was easy enough to justify. We're launching a big campaign next week. Sure, I can put in a few hours Saturday morning. Client needs last-minute revisions? Of course, I'll make sure it's done by Monday. But soon, those occasional favors became expectations. Saturdays stretched into Sundays, and suddenly weekends weren't mine anymore. My friends stopped inviting me to brunches and hikes because they knew I'd never show up. My family started calling less often, probably assuming I was too busy to answer anyway. And worst of all, none of it was paid. Not a single cent overtime laws didn't apply to salaried employees. HR reminded me cheerfully whenever I brought it up. This is just part of climbing the ladder, Lila, my boss once told me with a patronizing smile. You've got to pay your dues. Pay my dues? I thought bitterly as I stared at the clock, ticking past midnight yet again. For what? To keep feeding the machine while everyone else reaped the benefits? Because that's exactly what happened. Every successful campaign, every glowing client testimonial, every award Sterling won, it wasn't thanks to teamwork or innovation. It was blood, sweat, and unpaid labor squeezed out of people like me who still clung to the hope that someday, somehow it would pay off. By now, you might be wondering why I didn't leave. Why I didn't walk away from the toxic mess and find something better. Believe me, I asked myself the same question 1,000 times. But leaving isn't as simple as it sounds. There's fear, for one thing. The fear of starting over, of losing everything I'd worked so hard to build. Then there's pride, stubborn and stupid, whispering lies about perseverance and proving yourself. And beneath it all, buried deep down where I didn't want to look, was shame. Shame for letting myself get trapped in the first place, for staying silent while the system chewed me up and spat me out. That particular Friday, though, I hit a breaking point. I'd spent the entire day juggling 3 different projects, each more urgent than the last, fielding panicked calls from clients and passive-aggressive texts from my boss demanding updates. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, I was running on fumes, my head pounding and my stomach growling after skipping lunch again. Just as I was packing up to go home, my boss appeared in my doorway, holding another folder stuffed with documents. "Lila, good news," she chirped, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "We need you to finalize these reports over the weekend. Big presentation Monday morning. You know how Mr. Sterling loves his numbers." I froze, gripping the edge of my desk so tightly my knuckles turned white. "You mean unpaid overtime?" I managed to choke out, though I already knew the answer. She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on, Lila. You're practically part of the family. Besides, Think of it as an investment in your future. An investment, right, like all the other investments I'd poured into this company, only to watch them vanish without a trace. Something inside me snapped. A tiny crack at first, barely noticeable, but enough to let the anger seep through. I forced myself to nod politely, plastered on a fake smile, and promised to take care of it. But as I watched her walk away, heels clicking against the tiled floor, I felt the crack widen. The drive home was a blur. I barely remember pulling into my parking spot or trudging up the stairs to my apartment. All I could think about was how unfair it all was. How exhausting. How utterly pointless. I threw my bag onto the couch and slumped into my favorite armchair, staring blankly at the wall. That's when the idea came to me, not fully formed, not even coherent at first, just a flicker of rebellion sparking in the darkness. What if I didn't do it? What if, instead of spending my weekend chained to my laptop, I took matters into my own hands? What if I made sure nothing worked on Monday? At first, the thought terrified me. Sabotage? That wasn't who I was. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I was the reliable one, the responsible one, the person everyone counted on to fix problems, not create them. But the longer I sat there, the more the idea grew, twisting itself into something almost tempting. After all, I reasoned, I wasn't proposing anything drastic, just a little disruption, a minor hiccup to remind them what happens when you push people too far. Nothing permanent, nothing illegal. Just enough to send a message. By Sunday afternoon, I'd convinced myself it was the right thing to do. Not because I wanted revenge, necessarily, though I'd be lying if I said that wasn't part of it, but because I needed to reclaim some semblance of control. If Sterling and company refused to value my time and effort, then I would force them to see the consequences of taking me for granted. Monday morning arrived quicker than I expected. The alarm blared at 5 a.m., dragging me out of a restless sleep. For a moment, I considered backing out, telling myself it was crazy to go through with it. But as I showered and dressed in silence, the resolve hardened within me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every exhausted employee grinding away in obscurity, every overworked soul sacrificing their life for scraps of recognition. If I succeeded, maybe, just maybe, I could inspire others to stand up too. When I walked into the office at 7:30, the usual chaos greeted me. Phones ringing, printers jamming, hurried conversations echoing down the hallways. No one noticed anything unusual as I slipped into my seat and booted up my computer. With trembling fingers, I began implementing my plan, moving methodically through each step like a chess player anticipating their opponent's moves. First, I adjusted settings on our shared network drive, slowing access speeds to a crawl. Then, I tweaked the scheduling software used for client meetings, deliberately misaligning time zones and double-booking appointments. Next, I disabled the autosave feature on several key documents, ensuring that careless clicks would erase hours of work in an instant. Each action was subtle, designed to frustrate rather than destroy, to disrupt without leaving obvious traces. As the morning wore on, the effects became apparent. Colleagues muttered under their breath as files failed to load. Managers scowled at conflicting schedules, and tempers flared as frustration mounted. Even my boss looked frazzled, her usual poise crumbling under the weight of unexplained malfunctions. Yet, amidst the chaos, I remained calm, watching the dominoes fall with quiet satisfaction. Of course, I knew this was only the beginning. Once the initial shock wore off, questions would arise, investigations would begin, and suspicions would inevitably turn toward me. But for now, I allowed myself to savor the moment, to revel in the knowledge that I had struck a blow against the system that had tried to break me. Little did I know, however, that my actions would set off a chain reaction far beyond anything I could have imagined. By mid-morning, the office was in full-blown disarray. People were scrambling like ants whose hill had been kicked over. My boss, let's call her Vanessa, because she deserves a name as superficially polished as her demeanor, was pacing back and forth between cubicles, barking orders that no one seemed capable of following. The IT department had descended into what looked like controlled panic, their faces pale as they tried to diagnose issues that didn't exist in any tangible form. I sat at my desk, sipping coffee with deliberate nonchalance, pretending to troubleshoot the same problems everyone else was wrestling with. "Lila!" Vanessa snapped, appearing suddenly beside me. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. What's going on? Why isn't anything working? I turned to face her, feigning confusion. I'm not sure, I said, keeping my tone even. It seems like there's some kind of glitch in the system. Maybe it's a server issue. Vanessa glared at me like I'd suggested we all start speaking Latin. A glitch? We don't have time for glitches today. Do you realize how important this presentation is? Mr. Sterling expects perfection. Oh, absolutely, I replied, nodding earnestly. I'll keep digging into it. In the meantime, maybe someone should inform the clients about potential delays. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she stalked off toward the conference room, where a group of junior associates huddled around laptops, frantically trying to piece together slides that refused to save properly. Watching her go, I felt a strange mix of guilt and triumph bubbling inside me. Guilt, because deep down I knew messing with people's work wasn't entirely fair. And triumph, because for once the weight of responsibility rested squarely on someone else's shoulders. As the day dragged on, the tension in the office grew palpable. Phones rang incessantly. Emails piled up unanswered, and tempers flared hotter than the coffee machine, which, incidentally, also decided to malfunction halfway through the morning. One, particularly frazzled intern, burst into tears after accidentally deleting an entire client proposal, while another colleague stormed out of the building muttering something about quitting. It was chaos, but not the destructive, catastrophic kind. More like organized mayhem. And somehow, despite everything, I found myself smiling. It wasn't until lunchtime that things took an unexpected turn. As I picked at a sad-looking salad from the vending machine lounge, I overheard snippets of conversation from nearby tables. At first, it was the usual griping, complaints about deadlines, grumbling about management, idle gossip about who might get fired if the day continued spiraling out of control. But then something shifted. A young graphic designer named Theo leaned forward, his voice low but intense. You know what the real problem is, he said, jabbing his fork into a container of pasta salad. It's not just today. It's every day. They treat us like machines, expecting us to churn out results without ever stopping to ask if we're okay. Like last weekend, I worked 16 hours straight on that campaign launch, and did anyone even say thank you? No, because apparently that's just part of the job. The others nodded grimly, murmurs of agreement rippling through the group. Another coworker chimed in, her tone bitter. Yeah, and forget about overtime pay. If you're salaried, they act like your life belongs to them. Weekends? Holidays? Doesn't matter. You're supposed to be grateful for that opportunity. Listening to them, I felt a lump rise in my throat. These weren't just random grievances. They were echoes of my own thoughts, feelings I'd buried under layers of compliance and denial. For years, I'd convinced myself I was the exception, that if I worked harder, stayed later, gave more, I could rise above the grind. But sitting there, hearing my colleagues voice the exact frustrations I'd bottled up for so long, I realized how wrong I'd been. This wasn't about individual effort or ambition. It was systemic, and until we addressed the root cause, nothing would change. When I returned to my desk after lunch, I noticed something unusual. A small cluster of employees gathered near the water cooler, whispering animatedly. Curious, I drifted closer, catching fragments of their conversation. Did you hear about Lila? One of them murmured. She's been here since before anyone else, fixing stuff left and right. Honestly, I don't know what we'd do without her. My stomach dropped. Was this some kind of reverse psychology tactic? Had Vanessa planted these comments to make me look like a hero, or worse, a scapegoat? But as I scanned the room, I saw genuine appreciation in people's eyes. Coworkers who barely acknowledged me before now offered hesitant smiles, murmuring thanks as they passed by my desk. Even Theo stopped by to drop off a sticky note with a hastily scrawled thanks on it. For a moment, I considered confessing, telling them the truth about the glitches, the sabotage, the quiet rebellion simmering beneath the surface. But something held me back, a mixture of fear and uncertainty. What if they turned on me? What if my actions only made things worse? So instead, I smiled politely, thanked them for their kind words, and went back to pretending I was part of the solution rather than the source of the problem. By late afternoon, the mood in the office had shifted again. The initial panic had given way to exhaustion, and most people seemed resigned to the fact that today was simply a lost cause. Client meetings were postponed, deadlines pushed back, and Mr. Sterling himself, a towering figure known for his explosive temper, had retreated to his corner office, presumably to plot retribution against whoever he deemed responsible for the fiasco. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of something much bigger than myself. The conversations I'd overheard earlier lingered in my mind, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. If my coworkers were willing to talk openly about their dissatisfaction, maybe, just maybe, they'd be open to doing more than just complaining. Maybe they'd be ready to take action. That evening, as the clock ticked past 6 p.m. and the office began to empty out, I lingered at my desk, staring at the blank email draft on my screen. It was risky, reckless even, but the idea wouldn't leave me alone. Slowly, deliberately, I began typing. Subject: enough is enough. Hi, team. If you're reading this, chances are you've had a rough day. Maybe you're wondering why nothing seems to be working, or why everything feels so overwhelming lately. Let me start by saying this. You're not alone. Many of us have been pushed to our limits, forced to sacrifice weekends, holidays, and personal time for the sake of meeting unrealistic expectations. We've been told it's part of the job that we should be grateful for the opportunity. But let's be honest. Gratitude doesn't pay the bills, and burnout doesn't build careers. Today was different. Today, we saw firsthand what happens when systems fail, when processes break down, when we're forced to confront the cracks beneath the surface. Some of you might see this as a wake-up call. Others might view it as an inconvenience. Either way, I believe it's a chance to ask ourselves, is this really how we want to live? Is this truly the best we can hope for? I don't have all the answers, but I do know one thing. We deserve better. Better treatment, better compensation, better respect. Together, we have the power to demand change, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. If you're interested in discussing ways we can stand up for ourselves and create a healthier workplace, meet me in the cafe across the street tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Bring ideas, bring questions, bring whatever you think will help. Change starts with conversation, and I believe it's time we started talking. See you soon. A friend. I hesitated before hitting send, my finger hovering over the mouse. Once this email went out, there would be no turning back. I'd either inspire a movement or become the office pariah. Taking a deep breath, I clicked the button and watched as the message disappeared into cyberspace. Then I shut down my computer, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the office, heart pounding with equal parts fear and anticipation. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. Monday wasn't just the start of another work week. It was the beginning of something far greater, a spark that could ignite a fire. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe with butterflies in my stomach. To my surprise, nearly half the office was already there, huddled around tables with coffees in hand. Theo greeted me with a grin, holding up his cup like a salute. "You're braver than I thought," he said. Over the next hour, we really talked, about everything that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. Frustrations, ideas, hopes for change. By the end of it, we drafted a plan, a united request for fairer policies, including paid overtime and protected weekends. Armed with signatures from colleagues who'd joined the cause, we presented our proposal to HR, and to our astonishment, they listened. Within weeks, Sterling and company implemented new guidelines, acknowledging the importance of work-life balance. Morale soared, productivity improved, and for the first time in years, I felt proud to be part of the team. As for me, I didn't stay long after that. I decided to pursue something more fulfilling, but leaving wasn't bitter. It was empowering, because I'd learned that sometimes standing up doesn't just change your life, it changes everyone else's too. And that was worth every sleepless night.